Today's guest shares a deeply personal story of trauma, survival, faith, and rebuilding after incarceration.
You are watching Influence Media, PSI TV, the Netflix of biz brands.
His memoir is recorded in his book, Bullied Behind Bars. A gay Christian Trump supporter goes to prison. And Matthew walks through his realities that he faced and the lessons that he hopes others can take away from his journey. Our goal today is simply to give Matthew Melvin, my guest, space for his voice and his experience. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you so much, Trudy, for having me on the show. It's a true pleasure.
So, Matthew, I have a series of questions for you. Hopefully, we can get through many of them in the time that we have available. Let's start with this. What prompted you to write your memoir, Bullied Behind Bars? You wrote about your experiences. Why and why now?
I wrote my book while I was in prison, but I did it in a diary form so that I wouldn't forget the trauma and the daily experiences I had each day. And while I was doing that, I was putting a target on my back, because one thing you don't do in prison is write about other inmates. So I was essentially breaking a code of conduct, which I didn't agree to when I first came into the institution. And I was an anomaly. I mean, I was really one of those people that really didn't fit in. And it's sort of been a dichotomy of my life where I really have never fit into any group and society I've ever been a part of. So I wanted to share my story with the world so that nobody has to go through what I went through.
Well, I guess they say in the prison environment, snitches get stitches. So if you're writing names, you probably did put a target on your back. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I put a target on my back by doing that. And then when I came out, I wrote it and I exposed in detail certain elected officials in power, and I put a target on my back there too. But I'll tell you, I don't live in fear. Fear has never been something that has controlled me. I am fearless. And so I don't care. You can do whatever you want to me, but you're not ever going to take my mind.
mm. So Matthew, when you began writing, was there a particular moment or memory that you feel is like the heart of the story?
Good question. There were a lot of moments, but I think getting raped in prison was really the highlight of my experience. I didn't realize that it was that bad in prison. I mean, I had uh, in 2004, I was locked up for 18 months. And then in 2016, I was locked up again for another 18 months. And it wasn't until the second stint that I did in prison that I was really exposed to the rape and the danger of these individuals and how diabolical they really were. I think the first time I was somewhat shielded and didn't see exactly the essence of what was going on.
Now, in your book, Bullied Behind Bars, you're pretty open about your impulsivity, your at the time undiagnosed autism, your challenging family dynamics. How do you think those experiences all shape the path that you ended up on?
I think that it's made me the Christian faith believer I am today. For most of my life, I was a lukewarm Christian. I was engaged in the world, doing what I wanted to do 6 days a week. And then on Sunday, coming to church and asking God for forgiveness, but then going back to my old way. Today, my roots are deeply in the Bible. I spend hours each day studying the Bible. I spend a lot of time praying to God and finding fellowship with other men and women that have that strong desire, that strong faith desire to turn my life over to God as I understand him in Jesus Christ.
Hmm. And how did finally receiving that autism diagnosis as an adult change your own perspective on your past choices and your current struggles?
The diagnosis wants to put me in a box,
Mm.
and I will never and can never be put in a box.
But did it give you any perspective on why you may have made the choices you did at the time, or no?
Yes, because the shadow of autism and being on the Asperger's spectrum is that impulsivity. That impulsivity will still remains with me today, but I now have the tools to be able to better handle that. I have friends that I can talk to. I have Jesus in my life. So I've learned that talking about it is much more beneficial to me than isolating, keeping it to myself, and then reaping the consequences because I haven't dealt with the situation properly.
Hmm. You share some really candid reflections about your actions. You include both remorse and self awareness. How did you actually process your responsibility versus the circumstances around you?
Well, I think remorse is admitting that I made the mistakes, I did this. And so, as a result of my bad decisions, I face the consequences. In other
Mm.
words, if you have 10 people who break the law, each person is going to get a very different consequence. So, you choose the sin, or you choose the sin, you can't choose that consequence.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep. So, your book, Bullied Behind Bars, what do you hope readers take away from your very complicated honesty?
That being vulnerable and candid with people is really the way you want to live your life. Sugarcoating and putting on masks doesn't help anyone.
I agree. I agree. Wow. So, Matt, your memoir describes severe violence, harassment, and fear while you're incarcerated. What helped you survive those moments? I mean, because you basically survived. You're still here. What helped you survive those moments both mentally and emotionally?
Prayer, studying my Bible,
While you
realizing,
were in jail? While you were in
oh,
jail or
yeah,
something? Okay, okay.
I was studying my Bible. I went to every single Bible study. I was exposed to Jehovah's Witness, Christian Science, Scientology. All of these cults come into prison because that's where men and women are at their lowest point. They are missing
Mm,
that love that they're that doesn't will never be satisfied in the outside world. If I
mm.
look for affirmation from the outside world, I will always be disappointed. I need to first love myself before I can love another person.
Wow, a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people don't get that. That's absolutely true. So you're out of jail now. How has all this trauma that you've experienced affected your life since your release?
It's helped me to be the man that God intended me to be, to help other men and women that may not have been in prison, but maybe in a prison in their own life. I know plenty of men and women that have never gone to prison, but they're living in a prison in their mind because they're in a codependent relationship, an abusive relationship, abusive family or friends that they don't know how to get out of it. And my suggestion to anybody that's in that kind of relationship is it's never going to change. You need to break the cycle.
So would you say that that trauma that has affected your post incarceration life was significantly focused around relationships? Because you
Yes.
spoke mostly of really okay, 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 okay. So Matthew, I do have Christians in my audience. I do. In your book, you mention a clear awareness of what the Bible says about your personal sexual preference. How have you reconciled? Because you've said you read the Bible, you're a man of faith, but you do have the urges that you have. You're not the only one. How have you reconciled what you know the Bible says, because you noted it in your book, with your faith? How have you reconciled that?
That my relationship is with God is absolutely most important, and that sex outside of marriage is sin.
Mm. I think too, a relationship with God and with Jesus, you mentioned Jesus, is also very personal. And in that, in the fact that it is very personal, it's also very unique to you. So, would you agree with that?
Yes, we all have sin, and I've always said sin is still sin, even with a spiritual spin. So
Ah,
we as human beings can try to justify anything, that any behavior that we do. But in the
mhm.
end, if you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind.
Wow, that's good. That's pretty good. So Matthew, what does forgiveness mean to you? Both in giving forgiveness and receiving forgiveness, because you have things to forgive. You've been through trauma. Forgiveness is a core concept in biblical faith. What does forgiveness mean to you from a giving and receiving perspective?
Forgiving that person of their action and not being held hostage. If if anyone has unforgiveness or stress or anxiety, they can't concentrate. It
Hmm.
is all consuming.
Hmm.
And I think there's a clear difference, Trudy, between forgiveness and forgetting. I
Hmm.
have forgiven the people who have violated me and the folks in the judicial system, but that doesn't give them the token that I have forgotten, because I will never forget.
I think that's biblical too. I mean, God was known for annihilating complete generations and people groups because they had, the justice had to be done. So forgiveness is one thing, forgetting is another. Justice is still justice, regardless of if I feel sorry for you or not. So justice is justice, right? So what about receiving forgiveness? You first of all would have had to receive forgiveness from Jesus. So what about receiving forgiveness? What does that mean for you?
Jesus came to the earth, he was perfect in every way, and he died for my sins. He didn't have to do that. And he chose to get on the cross. He chose to do all of the things that he did, from walking to allowing um, the executioners to kill him. And if Jesus can forgive his executioners, surely I can forgive those people that have wronged me.
Wow. Wow, Matthew. Wow. So I can say on that. So your book shares that life after prison was difficult for you, especially in terms of employment, reputation, financial recovery. What do you want society to understand better from your perspective about life after incarceration?
It is still challenging. The trauma that I've dealt with through this process will never go away. And that I think I think I need empathy and not sympathy. I'm not looking for people to be sympathetic with me, but empathetic. And there's a clear difference. Sympathy is if somebody's in a hole, throwing down a pail to them. Empathy is going down to that well and helping them come back up. And I think most people can be sympathetic but are not empathetic. And there's a huge difference.
So you think empathy post incarceration is what you'd ask society to do better at understanding?
No question.
Okay. So piggybacking on that, in your opinion, what changes in the system do you believe would actually help people post incarceration that are actually trying to rebuild their life?
Having second chance employers, having employers that are more understanding, helpful. I think there needs to be changes in the system in terms of mental health. There's a lot of help in terms if somebody has a drug issue, but with mental health, the mental health diagnoses or the issues never go away. With a drug, all that person needs to do is get off the drug and the problems will be solved. With mental health, the problems never go away. So even with all the treatment in the world, that doesn't guarantee that the person is going to recover.
Okay, and you're also mentioning employers, but I think there should also be, in my opinion, part of the rebuild is also an introduction to entrepreneurial skill sets, because sometimes that is a good option when no one's willing to hire you, that you see a problem, solve it, and get paid for yourself, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the GED program is really, really helpful and should come into all the prisons to teach prisoners a skill that they can use when they get out. Because a lot of times prisoners come and they don't have a skill, they don't have something that they can do. If the prisons allowed them to learn a skill, they would be much more, they can make money. And that's why the recidivism rate is so high, because a prisoner comes out, he or she can't find a job, and so they revert back to the same behavior.
There are programs, but I don't think they're widespread enough or available for, different people groups. But they do exist, but I think it's not enough. So I agree with you. Now, at the start of this conversation, you mentioned your journaling and how it put a target on your back. But at the same time, the journaling and writing this book may have helped with your healing to some degree. If yes, speak to that for me.
Yes, absolutely. For me, journaling and being cathartic to get out that anger and resentment into words. And that was my
Therapy.
vehicle to
Okay.
release that energy out of me. Because again, the reason I was in prison was because I was suffocating and stuffing all of that emotion and not using it effectively. I think I go back to, there's a difference between healthy anger and unhealthy anger. In the Bible, it speaks very clearly that when the money changers were selling things in the temple, Jesus flipped the tables
Flip the
up,
tables. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and that was righteous anger.
Mm-hmm.
There's also something called unrighteous anger, and that is taking matters into our own hands and trying to resolve it.
Yes. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. So, yeah. So I agree with you on that too. So you've been making a round of various shows, Matthew. I really want to applaud you on that. I really wish more authors and more business owners would do the same. What was your driving reason for being willing and ready to show up on all these platforms, including PSI TV?
I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through. I want people, if whether you have a son or daughter that's engaging in small crimes, if it's not dealt with properly, it will accelerate. That was my story. It started with speeding and driving off without paying for gas and walking out of restaurants without paying. And because the issues were not dealt with properly, it accelerated.
Hmm. So what do you hope readers get from your book? Um, Bullied Behind Bars, a gay Christian Trump supporter. We didn't even talk about the Trump support, and that was kind of on purpose. Matthew, I try not to take my show to a political realm, because it's people can make their own decisions on that. So it's not like I wanted to avoid it. I'm very strategic about that particular side of the conversation. So I just want to put that out there. You do have images of you standing with your Trump sign and all that. So you're definitely a Trump supporter. But let's get to, what is your driving? Oh, you said it. What was your sorry, let me ask the question again. What do you hope readers get from this book? If there's one major takeaway that you really want them to leave with, what is it?
That my story can resonate with any reader out there. We all have our own challenges and struggles. And I think the key difference is that we need to find a vehicle to let out that anger and frustration. I was in therapy my entire life. I have never found it helpful. What I found helpful is doing men's work, going to a weekend with other men where we get vulnerable, we share our experiences. And then my favorite part is the carpet work, where we role play. Various men will role play different people in our life. And that's really where my healing began. I mean, it was always there. The journaling was helpful, but being able to go to a weekend with other men and share and have other guys play different roles and see how it progresses throughout life.
Yeah, I think, and that's almost an experience of empathy where you can see something through someone else's eyes. And then when there's role playing, you're seeing things through others' eyes. That's one of the reasons why movies are so great, because actors are themselves playing roles, and we who observe get to see roles played from different perspectives. So that's amazing. I'm fascinated by the fact that you found that to be a healing modality, and that's probably something mental health should explore even more. But I also want to add to that, if I may, the fact that you have written a book, a sellable book, that you have been willing to put yourself out there. I'm going to ask the audience for that to be a takeaway as well, that you mentioned that righteous anger, and this is a fabulous reframe of your energy, of your emotion, packaged into a more productive and profitable output rather than what you did with it in the past. So in other words, when you become that level of self-awareness and you realize, okay, this is how I feel, this is how I'm currently acting out, and you're able to reel that in and still have the same energy, still have the same fuel, but package it differently, i.e. in a book, cathartically just expressing everything. And now you have a productive piece, a potentially profitable piece, and a piece that's a legacy piece, because it will live beyond you to share your voice for generations to come. So I want, if nothing else, the audience takes that away as well. So Matthew, what does life look like for you right now?
I would love to be a public speaker and share my journey with the world. So if anybody that's listening wants to reach out to me, my email address is bullybehindbars@gmail.com. My book is available on Amazon, my website, bullybehindbars.com. And then you can reach out to me on social media, Bully Behind Bars on Instagram, Bars Bully on X, and Matthew.Melvin.5621 on Facebook. I would love to share my testimony and what I've been through with your listeners. And that's what I want to do. I want to get up in front of people and share my story and talk to people.
Well, you're doing that right now, and you've been doing it on other platforms. And whether it's a physical stage with people physically in a room, or because right now you're speaking to my audience, and I have an audience, so you're doing that, and there are multiple ways to expand that as well. But you've been doing a very good job, Matthew. I want to applaud you on that, because you really have put yourself out there, and a lot of people would want to probably hide their past and their experiences, but you have decided, not only have you accepted that you were guilty, that you've paid your price, that you recognize what where you are, you have your repentance, you gave your forgiveness, you put out a book. I think dude, I'm giving you the applause right now. So, what's next for you as an author or an advocate?
I would like to see systemic changes in our criminal justice system. And I would love to talk to youths that are at risk, juvenile detentions, and prisons to see change made.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a need for that. I don't know if the system allows for that, but I'm not familiar with that system, but it seems like there's a need for that, because I definitely think a lot of people don't know what they're in for. Um, so, so Matthew, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
If you are struggling, you feel that you need help, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. Email me. Don't hesitate. Don't put off to tomorrow what you can do for today. Don't procrastinate. I know a lot of people, they procrastinate like there's no tomorrow, and there may not be a tomorrow. So do today and don't put off tomorrow.
Very good. So Matthew Melvin, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And for viewers who want to learn more, Matthew's book, Bullied Behind Bars, A Gay Christian Trump Supporter Goes to Prison. That book is available on Amazon. You can also visit Matthew's website, which is bulliedbehindbars.com. He earlier in the show gave other ways that you can connect with him. As always, PSI TV features stories across a wide range of lived experiences so that audiences can learn, grow, and explore different perspectives. Matthew, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.